Have you ever stumbled across a story online that hits you so hard it doesn't even feel like just some random post? Today I was scrolling through Reddit and found a few stories like that. Way too real, way too creepy to ignore. I've got a feeling you're going to want to hear these. So, no more waiting, let's dive right in.
Story 1.
The last time I decided to journal my travels didn't tee in well. I was hunting a demon that had the supernatural abilities to create life out of written word, and all the messed up shit I put down came back to kick my ass for months after that. Nearly killed me on multiple occasions, and I had many sleepless nights. I think it's safe to say that the pesky little fucker got what was coming to him, though. I thought it ironic to use my own word as bait, only to lure him into a paradox. It went something like, "You will cease to exist once you understand why you cannot." You like that? I spent all day thinking about the best way to mess with him. Poor bastard tried to twist out of it, but you can't fight words when they break your own damn rules. He ended up comatose, loaded up in the back of my truck, and thrown into the holy burn pit after that. Good riddance. Anyways, my shrink says I gotta keep writing things down and really process my thoughts and actions. I can then maybe identify what triggers my PTSD and try to make some progress out of it. I don't think he really understands the gravity of what I do. As long as I keep hunting, I am safe. The world is a safer place. It falls on me to keep it that way. So, I'm shacked up in this musty yellow motel room inn, but fuck nowhere typing out my emotions. As long as it helps me hunt, then it's alright by me. But fuck nowhere is actually a special place called the Hoh Rainforest in Olympic National Park. All kinds of god and devil given creatures alike call a home. It's over 1,400 square miles of dense and mountainous terrain. Most of it is so remote that GPS and cell service doesn't work at all. What I'm saying is I'm very lucky to have narrowed my search down to just a small part of it. About 25 square miles is where my stage is being set here in Hoh. Hopefully it ends up being a good show. It's also one of the only temperate rainforests in the world, meaning it's cold, foggy, and constantly damp. Everything out here is covered in thick sheets of emerald moss. They grow out of twisted and wound up trees under the cozy blanket of fog. Those wind up trees are massive and ancient. Some even tower well beyond 300 feet. Their twisted roots and dense undergrowth make the forest a labyrinth with no real entrance or exit. Perfect for a little mouse like me to go and find my cheese. The whole place looks and feels like a dream. Straight out of high fantasy. I've already done some preliminary scoping out of the forest to figure out what I'll need to survive for a week or so. Camping out there is serene, but also utterly terrifying. It's so silent. You could hear your own blood pumping, only to be broken up by the sounds of blood-curdling screams. Cougars. Among the animals to look out for in these parts are of course bears. The aforementioned cougars, and maybe an elk if it's got its balls twisted in a knot that day. But the real big bad, the one I'm interested in, is responsible for centuries worth of disappearances and lunatics. I call it the Nemo Sith, from Mnemosyne, the Greek goddess of memory, and Sith, an old word for shadow or parasite. It's an elusive creature that I suspect has some sort of memory warping ability. From what I understand of the research, it feeds off of the memories of its victims, sucking them of their life's essence, so to speak. Once your memory is gone, you become like a husk with a brain filled with holes, as if a parasite burrowed its way through your soft, fatty tissue and left you to rot. I talked to a young man last week who had an encounter with it. The only possible survivor from such a deadly monster. Every other account was just second-hand descriptions of events. I can assure you that he acted like his head was Swiss cheese, and he looked like it too. After the incident, he's sure as shit couldn't take care of himself anymore. His parents kept him in his own room in the backyard. It was a shed converted to a livable area, complete with a bathroom, a sea, and everything. They claimed that they couldn't handle his episodes anymore, and so I got the vibe that they needed the space more than he did. They looked tired. They wheeled out a decrepit young man with a 1,000-yard stare, folded in a strange position, one leg tucked under himself and left arm grabbing the back of his seat. He looked like the origami of pain. A collection of mobile bag fluids and tubes littered around him. Some coming in, others out. He was gaunt and deathly. Head was caved in, a perfect concave lens around both temples leading to a sharp edge at the top, where some wiry hair held on. I smiled and waved with smooth southern hospitality, but could tell my smile was just a bit too straight-lipped. That slight grimace of acknowledging something terrible had happened to him, and my sympathy couldn't help but show itself in an awkward gesture. I hoped his parents didn't notice and thought I was wincing, but they didn't seem to mind. They gave me nothing but kindness. The sort of people that would take great care of their disabled child. Good people. "Hey, Eddie, my name is Mark," I said. I reached over and touched his frail shoulder. He squeezed his eyes and lurched back in his chair a little, like I was threatening to hit him. "He hasn't talked much since the accident," said his mom. The father chimed in. "He doesn't do much at all. Stares off into space, draws a little. He likes that one cartoon, you know, the creepy one with that weird pink dog courage baby. Yeah, that one." He looked solemnly at Eddie, then glanced at his wife for a brief moment, seemingly from embarrassment. I crouched down and got a better look at the kid. From what I've heard, the parents, Beth and Rick, went camping in Olympic National with their 2 sons, Eddie and Ryan, about a year ago. "So, Eddie, you like to draw?" He looked scared, nodded his head a little. "Beth, could you show me some of his drawings?" She took me inside his shed, which honestly looked better than my own apartment. It was pristine and clean, very sterile, hospital-like. His drawings were black and white sketches of abstract nature. Some almost looked like chicken scratch. They were all pinned up on a corkboard past a drafting table set up to fit his wheelchair under it. Some of the chicken scratch looked like humanoid figures, almost amphibious and wet, dripping with charcoal onto eggshell ground. One of them looked like a little boy holding hands with a taller, more pronounced and thick stick figure. I heard the rattle of Eddie's wheelchair behind me, and when I turned around, he looked me in the eyes for the first time. "Don't trust what you know," he slurred what you think. He took a deep and labored breath. "Yourself." I don't know what Eddie was trying to tell me, but I think at that moment he knew what I was at his home for. He knew what I was after, and I felt like he was trying to warn me. They said that Eddie started to act irrationally on the first day camping. He would say the same things over and over. He would think he was somewhere he was not. He started to have some night terrors in the tent, then went out sleepwalking in the middle of the night. Beth got scared shitless when she woke up and didn't see poor Eddie in his sleeping bag. She ran out into the forest, following the sounds of light thudding in the distance, and found Eddie bashing his head into a tree over and over. The bark was stripped bare, and so was his head, raw and broken, bleeding all over his face. He turned and looked at his mother, woke up, and cried. He didn't know where he was or what was happening to him. That night was the single most excruciating time of their lives. Something feverish that punched my gut and made me queasy. Beth tried to wake up her family, but she said it was as if they were drugged. They'd just mumble, Rick would say some profanities and something about leaving him alone, and they'd doze off once more. Meanwhile, Eddie was a zombie, looking off into those damp, twisted trees, eyes following each one in spirals, making him nauseous. He retched onto the ground, creating puddles of stomach acid until he dry heaved while his mom was desperately shaking and slapping her husband to wake up. "I don't want to go, no, Mom. Please don't leave me. Please," he begged her as she squeezed her else-s red-stained face and promised him everything was going to be okay. Beth dragged Rick out of the tent to try and put him in the truck to take to the hospital. She had the right idea to get the fuck out of Dodge, but it was too late. She says she swore she saw something dragging Ryan's limp body in the dark. When she shined a light at it, the thing hissed at her and looked at Eddie, who started to attack his mom. He didn't recognize her anymore and screamed she was a monster as he brutally beat his mom half to death. She said she could hear the bones in her face crunching under the weight of his fists. Her screams and pleads for help were so loud it finally woke up Rick, who promptly restrained his son. What the fuck are you doing?" she heard as she ran after the thing, carrying Ryan into the woods. All bloodied, face smashed in and still in her pajamas, she looked through swollen eyes as the thing held hands with Ryan, who was still only 5, kissed him on the cheek, and let him jump off the cliff ahead of her. Eddie followed behind, passing her right by as she was still frozen in shock, looking at a real-life monster that just pushed her little baby to suicide. He jumped off in one big leap to what was supposed to be his demise. She thought she lost both her babies that night. She thought she was insane. That's what the police told her too. That's what they told Rick, who at the time was folded like laundry at the foot of the truck by the hands of his deranged and empowered son. The thing looked back at her, and she swore she saw it give her a smirk, reveling in her pain, just for a moment before it leaped away. The authorities found Eddie and Ryan S. bodies the next day. No one thought Eddie had even a remote chance of survival, but he did. He hung on that whole night and half a day, battered and broken at the bottom of a crumbling rock face, with his little brother's dead body lying next to him. Nothing he could do, nothing he could say to be forgiven. Just the pain, just the sadness, just the insanity to keep him company. After hearing all of this, I didn't know what made the young man mad. Was it the Nosleep or his own actions? But Beth showed me a copy of his head MRI when I asked for it, and I saw for myself what the real damage was. It looked like a worm burrowed its way through his head, leaving it a messy art piece of collapsed bridges and glued together with sticks. How could anyone be alive with nothing but mush in their head? How could anyone keep living after they did such a thing? Thinking it was all their fault and had no one else to blame? I couldn't help but blurt out through gritted teeth, "This is sick." Beth looked up at me, finally with tears in her eyes and conviction in her voice. Stronger than any other sentence I heard the woman ever say to me. "You're going to kill it. You're going to stop that thing." Deep down, boiling inside me was a rage I haven't felt in a long time. Something animalistic and profoundly human. Consider the fucker dead. So, that is how I got here. Out in the boonies of Washington, setting the stage of my next hunt. I plan on waking up at dawn and heading to a fire lookout perched on a tall mountain overlooking the rainforest. I got my weapons ready, but something tells me I'll need some better tricks up my sleeve for a creature that LL wipe my memory and mess with my head. Something more than just firepower. I'll definitely need to keep my wits about me. The view from up here is amazing. Panoramic windows and deck give me the greatest vantage I can ask for. Although this being the case, dense fog and thick forest obscure the ground level where I can assume the Nosleep is hiding out. I already set a couple of alarm traps in my vicinity and made my presence known with a large bonfire I built at the base of the tower. The little fucker should know I'm here, and I hope to God he is hungry. I changed up my sleep schedule earlier on in the week so I can stay energized through the night, as it is likely a nocturnal animal. Just woke up a little before sunset, and I'm enjoying some instant coffee on the deck, taking deep breaths, and establishing a strong connection with my mind and body. If this thing is going to mess with my head, I figured the least I could do is practice some meditation, something my shrink also wants me to do anyways. I don't believe in hoo-ha nonsense like the spirituality you can buy at a supermarket, but I concur that the meditations do, in fact, calm my nerves. My list is all checked off. Traps, weapons, food, water, shelter, transport, radio. Looks good. Okay, it's time to find out what us little people are made of. Apologies if some of this doesn't make much sense. I'm still putting together the pieces of what happened last night. The sun was setting in marvelous glows of pastel tones arranged in warm colors that filled my body with comfort. I set down my mug when the final embers of the day vanished to reveal a night sky filled with the Milky Way. Like someone turned on the universe's nightlight, it presented everything in just enough cool tone lighting that a flashlight wasn't needed until the fog rolled in. I put on my backpack and threw the machete into my sling when I heard it. A loud bang, like a gunshot ringing out that rustled many feathers as a flock of birds got scared away just east of me. It could have been anything, but I had to go check and make sure. Climbing down the steps of the old rickety tower, I began to hear brutal screaming. The kind of screams you only hear in dire circumstances. Like someone was being mauled. Then another and another. I was surrounded by the screams of what sounded like women all around me. I knew them to be cougars, but it was definitely some shady shit going on. It was like surround sound all around my skull, and off in the distance they were all curdling in fear. It made me scared too. I took a second to ground myself and started running toward the east. Game time. Navigating that forest would been impossible without my headlamp and machete. Still, progress was slow even with the paths I marked and cleared earlier. It was like the shrubbery had some magical miracle grow in them, and they covered my paths just as fast as I cut them down. When I made it to my east trap, I was surprised to see that the trigger mechanism wasn't T-pulled. The sly shit tricked me already, but I was prepared for a lure anyways. I hate the intelligent ones because they always pull childish stunts like this, thinking they're smarter than me. I may not be a genius, but I'm good at what I do. I pulled out my handgun, closed my eyes, and listened. Then the slightest rustle in the leaves jolted me back. I flipped around, aiming through the iron, and then I wasn't there anymore. I was a kid, back in Arkansas, and I immediately threw up in my lap from the sheer, dizzying spiral of what just happened. I tried so hard to remember what was going on, but it was like my whole life before that never happened, and it felt like a dream to me. It got to a point that all I could remember was the mantra I said when meditating. Don't trust what you know, what you believe, yourself. I said in a rushed whisper over and over. I was startled when I got a slug to the face in the middle of my rambling. What the fuck is wrong with you, Mark? Said the man in the front driver's seat of an old Tacoma. You little shit. You ruined my fucking car. He threw more right hands at me until eventually pulling the car over to drag me out and started to beat me on the side of the road. The beating was a familiar taste I knew all too well. The salty sweat of man, I pushed back in my mind palace far, far away from myself. My father. I tried to push him away, but my feeble body didn't have enough strength to fight back. I just ate every hit until a tooth cut through my bottom lip, and I felt my nose crack and bleed down my chin. He stood up in a grunt and exacerbated breath. Today, that's the day, Mark. He took some deep inhalations. You're really fucking pushing me. I'll leave you out here if you don't suck it up. He walked over to the truck and cracked open one of the cores that littered the back seat. He started back over to me while swigging it. Watch you gotta say, little man. Still laying on that dry pavement, I spit a hot, bloody loogie at his feet. Fuck you, you freak. He got on top of me and really let me have it that time. Full swings and torn up knuckles driving my head into the pavement over and over. When I started to lose consciousness, I began to have flashes of me in the forest and something else on top of me. Something slimy and wet with claws and needle teeth. That's when I snapped out of it. I threw the thing off of me and was surprised to find just how light it was. About 90 pounds of gross muscle, contorted and amphibious. It reeked of mold and decaying meat. The Nemo Sith hissed at me and leaped away into a tree as I heard it bound across branches. You scared, bitch? I screamed in frustration. I let off a couple of shots, but none of them hit their mark as I was dizzy and tired. My equilibrium was off, and my ears rang like a bomb exploded in my skull. It bounded away, and I knew I had to go back to the tower to reassess and check the damage before it attacked again. The journey back was daunting. I stumbled all over the place and kept hearing my father in my head, yelling at me, telling me things, whispering to me to keep secrets. Terrible secrets. The one I'm in therapy for. When I finally made it back, I checked the mirror to find I indeed suffered a real beating. Broken nose, black eye, cut on the bottom lip. Definitely a concussion. The only new things were the small pin pricks nesting around my scalp. The monster tried to burrow its way through my brain, just like Eddie. It almost got me good. Bringing my dad out like that was a real pain, and when I started to think of him, my anxiety spiked. I shot up and cut down the stairs to the entrance of my lookout, boarded up the entrance, then sat in a corner and took deep breaths trying to get rid of my panic. Ever since I couldn't re-up my Xanax prescription, I've had to just suck it up and deal with the panic attacks myself. When I finally started to feel a bit better, I began to realize that taking away my only escape route might not have been such a great idea. But in my mind at the time, it was the only way to ensure I was going to be left alone. The only way to stay safe. I took some deep breaths in that musty corner and even ate a granola bar. It hurt like hell crunching on it, but I had to chew on something. I heard that animals only eat when they're safe. So if you eat when you're panicked, then you could trick the mind into relaxing. This time it only helped a little. Come on out, Mark. I heard from outside. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw Dad making rounds about the lookout. He was holding an axe and was bigger than I remember. wearing that same stupid hat and filthy plaid shirt, looking like a goddamn lumberjack. His hands and body were still dirty and bloody from the beating he gave me earlier. His voice boomed with authority. "You can't hide forever, little boy toy." Shit. Panic mode was in full effect. That's what he used to call me when I leaned out the porch and with gritted teeth started shooting at him. But I was still just as bad of a shot as earlier and couldn't quite reach him. The gun ran out of bullets, so I ducked back into the cabin and began reloading when I heard thunderous cracks coming from below me. They shook the tower and threw me off balance, knocking me on my ass. The bastard was going to take the whole thing down. Sure enough, the remaining legs couldn't withstand the weight of its cabin, and my big fat ass fell down with it. I saw the sky quickly revolve into earth and back again as I tumbled through the air. The cabin slammed into mountainside facing up, but at a steep angle, shattering all the windows. The impact made the fridge fall from above me, crushing my left arm between it and the floor. I screamed out in pain as it slid off me and fell through the windows and down the cliff. My arm was twisted up, compound fracture through the elbow, and nicked an artery too. Blood was gushing out 3 feet in spurts that were in sync with my heartbeat. I quickly tore off my shirt and wrapped it. That's when the cabin started sliding. The Nemo Sith started clawing at the barricaded door above me, cutting through the plywood like butter. It shrieked like a cougar and pounced as we both ski-dee our way down the slope. Trees and rocks rushed past us, tearing up the cabin and splitting it into pieces like grated cheese. I rolled around a wall to avoid getting hit, but the damn thing kept coming at me with ferocity, swinging its claws around with no purpose or care. I managed to shoot it a couple times in the body, and milky fluid bled from it like a punctured balloon. Smash! We made it to the bottom, and when the wreckage settled, all was silent. I stood up, and through double vision and fog I saw my dad again, approaching slowly with arms out wide. "You know I love you, buddy. I love you so much." Hunched over, half dead, and completely done with that shit, I said, "You love me now?" and emptied the rest of my magazine into the filth. He doubled over and flexed back, arching his spine into a bridge that melted the skin off and became his true form. A slimy, nasty, overgrown frog thing. It screamed one last time, rattling its lungs out until slowly catching a hitch in its breath, gurgling on fluids. It slowly died there, melting into the wreckage like bubbly acid. It took some time getting back to my truck. Even more time to drive to a hospital and convince the staff I was just in a car wreck. You live and you learn. I called Beth in the hospital and let her know what happened. She's ecstatic and invited me over for dinner once I get out. I begged her to make me some cheesecake, and she did me one better to offer a ride from the hospital with Rick and Eddie too. I'll be taking a short break from hunting to heal up and recharge. In the meantime, I'll be taking any offers or bounties people have and setting up a schedule. My shrink is pissed that I missed my last appointment and told me no excuses when I explained the whole almost dying thing. He told me to just keep journaling and make sure to come back to the office once I'm out of the hospital. That guy. Something still bugs me though. When I first came down that tower, I didn't just hear one cougar. They were everywhere, maybe just another sick trick. Anyways, till next time. Mark.
Story 2.
We've been trying for 3 years. Ovulation kits, temperature charts, acupuncture, sex reduced to numbers. Mara took herbs that made her nauseous and cut out caffeine, like the internet said. I wore boxers and avoided hot baths. It all felt ridiculous. But when you want something badly enough, you'll obey any superstition like gospel. The hospital's verdict came last spring. Unexplained infertility. They called it Mara's ovaries unresponsive, her womb apparently inattentive, like her body had simply decided it wasn't interested. I remember the look on her face when the consultant delivered the news. Not shock, not grief, just a blank stillness, like something inside her had gone completely quiet. She didn't speak on the drive home. That night, she scrubbed the kitchen floor until her knuckles bled. Weeks passed. I offered adoption. She said no. Then she changed. Quietly at first. She stopped going to therapy, stopped checking her cycle. But she started reading books I'd never seen before. Old ones, with warped covers and titles in Gaelic or Latin. One was bound in hide. I asked where she found them. She just said, "I'm looking into older solutions." She began following groups online. Forums, private servers, names like Womboff Stone and the Crooked Thorn. When I asked what they were, she shrugged. Traditional medicine, pre-Christian fertility rites, herbal stuff, holistic, but something in her tone sounded rehearsed, like she was reading lines someone had given her. That was around the time the symbols started showing up. Not carved, not drawn appearing. Chalk white whorls on the bedroom mirror. A line of twisted twigs on our doorstep, bound in red thread. A small mound of dirt on the pillow between us when I woke. I accused her. She denied it, but I knew she was lying. She was pale all the time, feverish. Her skin took on a waxy sheen. I found a leather folio under the bed. Inside were notes, copied by hand from something older. It referenced Celtic god forms I'd never heard of. Brigach the Breeder, the threefold crown, and something called in Croiler Fiainth wild core. The pages spoke of hollow wombs as sacred space, vessels for something ancient and pre-human. The Baron weren't cursed. It said they were chosen. Prepared. I confronted her. She screamed at me for the first time in our marriage. "This isn't your pain," she said. "You don't get to say no." That night, I woke to find her standing in the attic, barefoot, bathed in moonlight. There was a light, she whispered. It came through the ceiling. It saw me. She said it like someone describing a religious experience. Her hands cradled her stomach. It chose me. I tried to pull her back down the stairs. Her skin was hot to the touch. She didn't resist. She just kept smiling. 3 days later, she vomited blood. A week after that, a test came back positive. Pregnant. Her face changed. Not softer, not relieved reverent. She began painting again. Symbols, this time deliberately. 3 spirals joined at the center. Deer skulls crowned with branches. A woman with no face giving birth to a burning star. And the baby grew too fast. 6 weeks in, she looked 4 months gone. Her eyes dimmed. She said the baby whispered during her dreams. Not in words, but images: crumbling hills, blood-fed roots, standing stones wrapped in skin. When I suggested a hospital visit, she laughed. They won't see it. Not yet. It's not for them. Over the next few months, I started hearing things. Chanting under the floorboards. A scratching in the walls like fingernails or hooves. Sometimes I'd see movement from the corner of my eye, too quick to be Mara, too deliberate to be rats. The lights began to flicker during dusk and stay dim even at full brightness. Our clocks stopped keeping time. The dog ran away and never came back. Mara locked herself in the nursery, painted a mural of a tree with limbs that ended in eyes. At night, I heard her whisper, "I receive you. I receive you. I receive you." She went into labor at 3:17 a.m. No pain, no screaming, just a low, guttural hum that seemed to come from somewhere deep beneath the house, resonating through her. She called to Meckham, polite asking for towels and water. Her belly was stretched taut like overripe fruit. Her skin had split in places, weeping clear fluid. She gave birth on the nursery floor, surrounded by ash and salt. The thing that came out was small, limbs long, skin translucent and gray. Its mouth was sealed over with skin. Its eyes were black and searching knowing. And the moment I looked into them, I felt something open in me, like a trapdoor in my mind. No voice, no words, just a single presence, entering without permission. The womb was borrowed. "You'll be next." I wanted to run. My body wouldn't move. It stared. I felt it reaching through mapping me. And I understood, suddenly, what she'd meant. Mara hadn't wanted a child. She wanted purpose. The cult had given her that. The rites had filled her. She hadn't conceived, been inhabited. A vessel, a gate. She lay back, her body already fading, bones hollow, eyes glassy, skin sinking inward like air leaving a suit. She smiled once, and then collapsed like a broken tent. I took the child. I don't know why. Reflex. Pity. Or maybe it already owned me. I laid it in the crib. It never cried. It just watched. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work properly anymore. The sun rises but never moves. Shadows stretch in directions that make no sense. Every door, leads to the nursery. The baby grows not in size, but in presence. The house gets smaller, tighter, warmer. My bones ache in the mornings. My skin flakes in symmetrical patterns. My dreams are filled with circles and mouths. I feed it when it lets me. It accepts food but never chews. It absorbs, consumes, and it hums now. Same tune Mara used to hum the night before the light came. Last week, I found a message in the attic, carved deep into the floorboards beneath her prayer mat. She was the beginning. You are the end. I don't sleep anymore. The walls pulse when I close my eyes. And sometimes I wake up and the baby is sitting upright in the crib, mouth still sealed, watching me with that impossible gaze. Waiting. Yesterday, I woke with something wrong in my gut. Not pain, not illness. Movement. Slow, patient pressure beneath the skin of my abdomen. As if something was rooting, preparing. There's no doubt now. I'm a second gate. And whatever comes next won't need my permission. It will walk. Because Mara was only the first. And I prayed, too. And it heard me.
Story 3.
When I was a kid, my friends and I used to play hide and seek with something else. I think we're still playing. I'm scared for my life. I don't know how or why it's back. It shouldn't be here. It's been 11 years, 11 fucking years. I just want to forget it, but it doesn't want to forget me. Let me start from the beginning. It all began in 2014 when I was 9 years old. I'd say my childhood was perfect, a family that loved me, good friends, a nice school, and all the fun things you do as a kid. We played games like hide and seek. Even now, I can't understand how a simple game like hide and seek would go on to destroy my life. But enough about my childhood. Everything started on November 3rd, 2014. I had a friend group made up of 3 people, Jack, Lily, and Jacob. During lunch break, Jacob asked if we wanted to play hide and seek in the forest behind his house after school. We all said yes, of course. I mean, who would say no to a game of hide and seek? Looking back, I wish I had. Not because I'm 20 now, but because of the trauma from the last time I ever played at that time. So, as I said, we all said yes. A few hours after school, we were at Jacob's house. It was around 5 p.m., which in November means it's nearly pitch dark outside. But for being 9 years old, we were pretty brave. No one was scared of the dark. We just thought it made things more fun and challenging. Since no one ever wanted to be the seeker, we usually did a rock, paper, scissors tournament to decide who would start. We were just about to begin when, "Can I play too?" The voice nearly gave me a heart attack. We all turned around. In the light of a street lamp, we saw a boy about our age. I asked Jacob if he knew the kid, but he didn't. The boy just stood there, waiting for an answer. We huddled in a circle and quickly discussed whether to let him join. The conversation didn't take long. Of course, we'd let him play. Even if we didn't know the guy, he hadn't done anything to us. Jacob asked what his name was. David, he said. Jacob asked where he lived. David said he lived a bit into the forest. Lily asked what school he went to. He said he was homeschooled. Now that we knew a bit more about the kid, we could start. But there was a problem now that we were 5. We couldn't do our usual rock, paper, scissors tournament. "I can start," said David. Since none of us wanted to be it, no one objected. We had 1 minute to hide before David would start looking. As soon as David started counting, we all ran into the forest to find hiding spots. My plan was to get as far away from David as possible without getting lost in the huge forest. After a little while, I still hadn't found a good spot, so I jumped into a random bush and buried myself in it as much as I could. Once I got comfortable, I was prepared to sit there a while. After some time, I was sure the minute was up. I sat in that bush, trying not to move or make a sound. After what felt like hours, I was still alone in the bush, surrounded by complete silence, not even birdsong. The silence was suddenly broken by a loud scream. I was so shocked, I nearly jumped out of the bush. The scream stopped as suddenly as it started. I sat back down, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. Had David scared someone? But the scream lasted too long, at least 3 seconds. Maybe he fell and got hurt. I decided to stay in the bush. Maybe he had just scared someone, and I didn't want to get caught because of it. About 3 minutes later, I started hearing rustling in the leaves on the ground. I froze completely. The rustling got closer and closer. I tried taking the smallest breaths possible so David wouldn't hear me. And then silence. I realized I'd been closing my eyes, so I opened them, and I froze. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. An animal? No, I've never seen an animal that looked like that. A person? No, that wasn't right either. It was pitch black and tall, at least 2 meters tall. So thin. Its feet were huge with 2 long, sharp toes. Claws, maybe. Its arms were long, and its hands enormous fingers so long they nearly touched the ground. Whether those were claws or just sharp fingers, I couldn't tell. It was so darker than anything I'd ever seen. I could see its ribs so clearly, and behind them, its lungs as they filled and emptied with air. Its windpipe ran from its throat down to the lungs. I expected it to have big, sharp teeth, but it had human teeth, which was somehow even more terrifying. Its eyes were blacker than its body, making the outlines visible. And deep in the middle of its eyes were 2 small, glowing white dots. On top of its head were shriveled little strands of hair. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. It would hear me. It stood completely still while its head slowly rotated like it was scanning the area. I just sat there in the bush, silently praying to God that it would go away. After what felt like forever, it finally walked off deeper into the forest. I waited a minute after it had left, then started running. I ran as fast as I could through the forest, tried to get out. I didn't care if it hurt me, I just needed to get out alive. After a few seconds, I heard twigs snapping and leaves rustling behind me. I looked back but saw nothing. I kept running until I tripped on a rock and fell to the ground. My knee was scraped up, but I couldn't stay down. When I looked up and got moving again, I froze. My body kept running, but my brain stopped. In the tree ahead, Jack was hanging. His stomach was cut open. His eyes were gouged out. In his mouth was his heart. He wasn't hanging by a rope, he was hanging by his own intestines. There was so much blood. I screamed and ran even faster. I grabbed a rock while running and threw it at the creature. It let out the most grotesque scream I've ever heard. I ran and ran until I finally saw the glow of the streetlights. I started crying. I reached the field between the forest and Jacob's house. I turned around and saw Jacob and Lily also running out of the woods. The creature wasn't chasing me anymore, it had started going after them. I kept running until I reached Jacob's house. His parents came running out, they must have heard our screams. I turned around again and saw Lily and Jacob make it to the house too. It wasn't chasing them anymore. Once we were all at the house, Jacob's parents asked what the hell had happened. Jacob told them everything, how we were playing hide and seek and how the creature had chased us. His parents told Lily and me to go home. The next day, I texted Jacob and asked what happened after we left. He said he told them everything, but they didn't believe him. He told them about Jack and how the police had taken him down from the tree. Jacob told the exact same story to the police. They didn't believe him either. That day, I wondered what had happened to David, but I think I understand now. Even though I never believed in the supernatural, I do now. I think David was that creature. It's been 11 years since then, and I never thought I'd see that thing again. But I was wrong. Last night, when I went for a walk, I saw it. It was standing in a small playground about 3 minutes from my house. I managed to hide behind a tree before it saw me. After what felt like hours, it walked away. I've texted Jacob about it. Whether he believes me or not, I don't care. I'm leaving tomorrow. I don't want to play hide and seek anymore.
Story 4.
The box turned up on a Thursday. No knock, no delivery van. Just there, sitting quietly on the front step like it had always been there, or like it had been waiting long before this house even existed. It was black, seamless, matte, no tape, no logo, no crease to suggest it had ever been opened or closed. Claire picked it up first. I remember how her hands hesitated, just slightly, like she didn't want to touch it at all. It was heavier than it should have been. Not just physically, something about it dragged the moment down. Made the kitchen lights feel dimmer. Made the air feel stale. There was a folded card tucked just beneath the bottom of the cube. No handwriting on the front. Inside, 5 words, 1 wish. No takebaks. I laughed. Claire didn't. You think it's cursed? I asked, trying to keep it light. She forced a grin and said, "What are you going to wish for? $1 million? A flamethrower? I've already got everything I need, I said, looking at her like an idiot in a perfume ad. She rolled her eyes and left it on the counter. We ignored it until Saturday, hangover dragging me down. The room still smelled faintly of burnt toast and the old garlic bread we forgot in the oven. Claire opened the box. I just watched. Inside, a single red button sunk into black velvet. It looked plastic cheap, like something off a game show set. But even from where I stood, I could tell it didn't belong. It hummed without sound. It felt patient. Claire ran her thumb around the edge of the velvet and stopped. If you could wish for anything, I said, what would it be? She didn't even blink. To never lose this. So I pressed it. It made a small click. That was it. No lights. No spark. No trembling floor. Just a click. We laughed. We made pancakes. The world continued spinning, but I swear something behind it tilted. The crash happened on Monday. Wet roads. A jackknifed lorry. Her car folded in half. The pictures didn't look like wreckage, they looked like something that had been chewed. They told me it was quick. No pain. But when I saw her body, I knew they were lying. Some expressions don't leave a face even after death. Hers still held fear and surprise. I went home that night and sat in the dark. I couldn't cry. It wasn't grief. It was something deeper, something bottomless. The kind of silence that feels like it's waiting for you to scream. Then the stairs creaked. Just once. Third step from the bottom. The one that always whined when Claire walked barefoot in the mornings. I held my breath. And then I heard it again. She was in the kitchen, on the floor, laid out like a doll someone had forgotten to pose properly. Her limbs were twisted wrong. One leg folded underneath her hip, an arm pinned under her back. Her clothes were soaked, her face slack. Her eyes were open. She didn't move, not while I stood there. But when I turned to leave the room and looked back, she was sitting up. Not breathing, not blinking, just watching me. She never moved when I watched. Not once. But every time I turned a corner, left a room, closed my eyes, I'd find her somewhere else. Upright, unblinking, always staring. She'd be in the hallway, at the edge of the bed, at the bottom of the stairs. One time, sitting on the kitchen counter like she just climbed up there. Her body still broken, her skin beginning to dry and crack. Her expression never changed. Not sad, not angry, just watching. I tried to bury her again. I drove 2 hours into the countryside and dug until my hands bled. The ground felt wrong, too soft, too eager. When I left, I thought it was over. She was back that night, on the couch, folded into the same impossible shape. I didn't even check the front door. I knew it hadn't opened. Each day, she decayed more. Skin like paper, eyes dulling, teeth exposed now where her lips had dried and curled back. But she still turned up, still moved when I didn't see. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. I couldn't take my eyes off her for more than a few seconds, because she'd be closer. One morning, I found her standing at the foot of the bed. Same position, same stare. I pulled the box from the trash and begged, screamed at it, slammed it against the wall until the casing cracked and something inside buzzed like an insect trapped in resin. Nothing changed. The note was still true. One wish. No takebaks. Last night, I woke up to her on the floor right next to the bed, inches from my face. One arm bent wrong beneath her. One leg twisted like a broken puppet. Her head turned toward me, resting on her shoulder at an angle a human neck should never reach. Her skin was the color of parchment. Her eyes were dull marbles sunk too deep in her face. Her lips had split, and blood had dried across her chin like black paint. And she didn't move. I watched her for what felt like hours, long enough for the sun to begin hinting at the horizon. And she never blinked. I know what I wished for. I see that now. I didn't wish for money or fame or power. I wished to keep something, and I got exactly what I asked for. What remains is not Claire. Not anymore. It's just the shape of her, the memory of her body, a constant, rotting echo of what I refused to let go. She's still here, and she always will be, because I couldn't bear to lose her, and now I never will.
Story 5.
Last summer, some Czech tourists brought in a lynx, found it passed out on the side of the road, and didn't notice the tranquilizer darts sticking out of its back. They just thought cute kitty and Googled the nearest clinic. They didn't know it was a lynx, and to be completely accurate, they didn't really bring it to the clinic. They managed to get their car into our driveway before the wild animal woke up, scratched them to shit, and then made a glorious escape through the car window. Animal control never recovered the lynx, but then again, they didn't try too hard. There's only 8 police officers in our town. I know all of them, if not by first name, then certainly by last. When I called in after the lynx incident, I was mainly calling so we could share a laugh over how dumb tourists can get. I worked in vet care for almost a decade now, and that was the only time I ever had to contact the authorities. Until tonight. Tonight, I'll have to call them again, and they'll have to call for backup from Poprad and just about any other city that can spare the men. Tonight, I'll have to call the cops again, and there will be no laughter. Night shifts at the clinic are never busy. Most of our clientele are folks out in the villages. They know their animals well enough to not require midnight help. And even if there is an emergency, they are unlikely to ride the hilly roads after sundown. Most of my night shift work revolves around restocking, admin stuff, and keeping an eye on any overnight patients we have. It's been a slow week. The paperwork I had to manage got knocked out in 15 minutes, and there was no need to restock anything. Our sole overnight visitor, a prize pig from one of the nearby villages recovering from skin infection, was doused out on meds and gave no indication of waking up for the next 12 hours. When it started storming outside, I got comfortable with the idea of spending the night alone. The winding roads beyond our town are dangerous in the dark. When they get wet, they turn deadly. As the rain started to tap on our tin roof and thunder rumbled beyond the valley, I rested my head on the desk for a little catnap. I was pried from my sleep by the shrill cry of the buzzer. Standing outside of the clinic, right beneath the rainwater pouring from the roof, stood a red-haired teenage boy. His rusted-up bike was leaned up against the door. In his hands, he held an old milk crate. I was still half asleep when I got to the door. Barely understood what the kid was talking about. He was manic. He pushed the crate into my hands and assured me that the animal that was inside was good and that I should look after it. He also said that people would come looking for it and that I shouldn't give it away because it's a good animal. The kid was in a state of shock. I was drowsy enough to be calm. When I asked him to come inside of the clinic and explain the situation more clearly, the teen backed out into the rain. His eyes kept on drifting towards our security camera. He kept repeating that the animal in the box was good. There was a phlegmy, purring sound coming from inside the crate. Just as I registered it, the kid hopped up on his bike and drove off into the storm. The interaction was strange, but I was drowsy enough for everything to feel strange. I called after him, asking for some form of contact information, but his scrawny shape quickly disappeared into the night. With a strained, purring sound urging me on, I grabbed the crate and brought it into the operating room. I expected a cat, potentially a cat that got hit by a car. When I took off the lid of the crate, however, I witnessed something incomprehensible. My shriek woke up the pig. From inside its cage, the big creature's eyes looked up, blinked once, twice, and then receded back into their drug-fueled sleep. The prize pig drifted off, but I was wide awake. I was terrified. The creature that lay in the box was unlike anything I had ever come across in my studies. It looked vaguely like a cat. It looked like a cat, but it had 6 legs and scaly skin, and there was a messy growth of grass on its back. The creature was patently unnatural, but once the shock of its visage wore off, my instincts kicked in. The animal's paws were twitching. Its slitted eyes were struggling to stay open. The creature was clearly in great discomfort. Even though I was looking down at a being wholly outside the realm of natural biology, my instincts kicked in. The scaly body was heaving in delirium and warm to the touch. Whatever the creature on the table was, it was running a fever. After getting confirmation from a thermometer, I readied an antipyretic and injected the creature in one of its paws. Moments after I pressed in the syringe, the sickly purring stopped and the animal's breathing calmed. Seeing the creature's condition improve didn't calm me. Once the instincts that drove me to treat it dissipated, the animal's incomprehensible form took over my mind again. I didn't know what to do. None of the folks I work with would be awake, and even if they were, they would be none the wiser with how to proceed. I knew my coworkers wouldn't be of any help, but being alone with the strange being was not something I could handle. As the cat creature rested on the operating table, I ran over to the lobby to grab my phone. When I came back into the operating room, the strange animal was still unconscious, but something about it had changed. The growth on its back, the strange mixture of flowers and stalks, it no longer looked wilted. Slowly, as the thing took long, deep breaths, the greenery on the creature's spine started to shift. I called my boss. I prayed that he would pick up and shed some light on why there was a six-legged cat being in our operating room. But the phone stayed dumb. In an effort to convince myself that what I was seeing was indeed real and not the product of some fugue state, I swiped over to the camera app and snapped a picture. The photo was clear. What I saw on the screen was just as discomforting as what I saw in the flesh. I stared at my phone, trying to make sense of what was happening, but soon enough my attention was gripped away. Taking the picture had woken up the creature. Cautiously, and with some visible discomfort, the cat thing rose to its paws. Its eyes were a lightish brown hue and slitted like those of a goat. The thing stared at me. I stood there frozen, unable to understand whether the animal meant me harm. The creature itself did not move, yet the growth on its back shivered and grew. A bulbous mass, rose-like in structure, started to bloom on the animal's back. Green tendrils, like cautious tentacles, wiggled their way out of the cat creature's rose. The appendages moved slowly and suggested no threat. Yet with each breath the being took, they expanded further. One of them bumped up against a metal tray and sent it clattering to the floor. The crash didn't startle the creature much, but it woke up the sleeping pig. Once again, the drowsy eyes looked up at me from the cage. They blinked once, twice, and looked as if they were to close again, yet then they saw the cat creature. With unrestrained terror, the prize pig started to squeal. It threw its heavy body back and forth in the cage in a desperate attempt to avoid the sight of the reptilian cat. No tranquilizers could suppress the swine's fear. The six-legged creature did not like the pig either. The moment that the squealing started, the reptilian cat leaped off the operating table towards the high shelves. Without knocking down any of the supplies, it crawled its way over to one of the air vents, dislodged the cover, and crept inside. The discomforting creature disappearing didn't calm down the pig. I was just as shaken by the strangeness of the creature, but I didn't have any fresh stitches. Seizing my instincts, I bent down to the pig to try to calm it. That's when I first heard the buzzer. The sound was mere background to me. I was focused on calming the pig. It wouldn't stop squealing and throwing its body around. It's when I decided that the pig needed an injection that I heard the buzzer again. It was followed up by the sounds of shattered glass. The front door had been knocked out. Someone was inside of the clinic. I left the squealing pig behind and made my way towards the lobby. Perhaps it was wishful thinking, but in that moment, I thought it was the teen who had dropped off the strange creature in the first place that broke through the door. It didn't occur to me that the visitors might be dangerous or mean me harm. It should have. In the lobby they stood, towering and dumb, all dressed in village garb. There were 3 of them, and they only differed in the clothes they wore. Each of them held a shotgun or a rifle. The moment they saw me, all their weapons had a single target. They didn't speak. No matter how much I pleaded with them to tell me what was happening, they didn't utter a word. Instead, they ordered me around with their rifles. One of the bald giants pointed me towards the edge of the lobby, whilst the other 2 went over to the operating room to investigate. The man left with me stared in my direction, but seemed to be looking past me. There was very little life in his eyes. He was deaf to all my pleas. Off beyond the lobby, I could hear the prize pig squealing in horror. It did not squeal for long. A shotgun blast turned the animal silent. As if the shotgun was a starter pistol for the race of my life, I started to beg for forgiveness again. I told the bald giant that I would run away, that I would never tell anyone what I saw, that I would forget the whole night. His eyes stared past me, and his weapon didn't shift. From the surgery, one of the other bald giants emerged. He still wore a scowl on his face that suggested a desolate inner life, but his rifle was slung across his back. In his hands, he was holding a photograph. A six-legged reptilian cat. The giant shoved the photograph in my face and gestured wildly. He opened and shut his mouth in an attempt to speak, but he couldn't. He had no tongue. He had no teeth. The inside of his mouth was just a cavern of wet flesh. Past my terror, I tried explaining what happened with the teen that showed up earlier that night. Both the giants were deaf to my words. The gun was still being aimed at me. The photograph was still being shoved in my face. No matter what I said, the giants remained threatening and deadly. In the air ducts above, I could hear something rustle. The giants didn't look up. When another shotgun blast sounded off from the clinic, however, they both turned around. In that brief moment of inattention, I desperately wanted to run away and call for help. My legs, however, would not budge. When a few seconds of distraction passed, the giant with the photograph grabbed his rifle and set off to the surgery. The other man's dead stare turned back to me, as did his gun. Off in the surgery, metal trays came crashing to the ground. Another gunshot went off, then another. Then the room went quiet. The bald giant's rifle was still pointed at me, but the man's hands were shaking. His eyes kept on drifting off to the side, searching the hall which led to the surgery for movement. The bald giant was hoping for his comrade to re-emerge, but he did not. What came from around the corner shot panic across the bald giant's dull eyes. Like the tentacles of some horrid sea beast, the vines emerged from the hall. When I first saw them extend from the cat creature's back, they swayed like tree branches in gentle wind. Now they moved like whips. With a crack, the slick tendrils wrapped around the giant's wrists and sent him crashing to the ground. The tiling cracked beneath the impact of the man's skull. He struggled, but it was worthless. Soon, two more tendrils emerged to grab a hold of his kicking legs. With a trail of blood springing from his forehead, the bald giant was dragged around the corner. He howled in a terrible low tone. His pained, tongueless shrieks rose in manic notes until, finally, they whimpered out. From the hallway, I could hear the sound of a full bucket being emptied. Before I found the bravery to go look into the hallway, trickles of crimson seeped around the corner. The prize pig lies mutilated in its cage, barely recognizable. Metal bars twist around the impact site, a gruesome testament to the shot that ended its life. But the pig isn't the only victim. The three giants who stormed my clinic have met a fate far worse than death. Calling what happened to them killed is an understatement lie to comfort the mind. They are torn apart, obliterated. The hallway and surgery room are transformed into a slaughterhouse, painted in deep red, littered with fragments of flesh and shattered bones. The scene is a grotesque puzzle of human remains, unidentifiable pieces of what used to be people. The cat creature is gone as well, the window flung open, curtains gently dancing in the dying storm. I pray it never returns, that it disappears into the night, just like the lynx from last summer. All that is left now is to call the cops. This time, there will be no laughter, no shared joke about foolish tourists or strange occurrences. When the authorities arrive, they won't just find the aftermath of some tragic accident. They'll find a massacre, something unexplainable, something that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. https www.reddit.com room jail precincts commence tonight 3218b. That's it for today's creepy Reddit tales. Before we go, I just want to say a quick thanks to all of you for watching, liking, and sticking around. You guys keep this channel going, and I'll be back soon with more stories that'll make your skin crawl. Drop a comment if you've got your own spooky tale to share, and I'll see you in the next one.